I can't write in Dr. William Lee's exact voice or impersonate him, but I can give you an original, evidence-based script in a calm physician-scientist tone. What if a food in your kitchen could help your body defend its DNA, calm daily inflammation, and support the biology that helps protect you from disease? I'm a physician-scientist, and in the next 25 minutes, I want to walk you through one of the most fascinating areas in modern nutrition research: how a simple food may help your cells repair, defend, and recover at the deepest biological level. Stay with me, because at the end, I'm going to tell you which single food has some of the strongest research behind it for DNA protection and inflammation control, and why scientists at places like Johns Hopkins and leading cancer research centers keep coming back to it. To understand this, you need to know something extraordinary about your body. Right now, as you're listening to me, your body is not passive. It is constantly sensing damage, repairing tissue, replacing worn-out cells, training immune cells, feeding the microbiome in your gut, and protecting the integrity of your genetic material. A review published in Cells reported that each human cell experiences more than 10,000 DNA lesions a day, most of them created by normal metabolism. That sounds alarming, but it should also fill you with awe, because your body is equipped with elegant repair systems designed to handle this burden. The question is not whether damage happens. It does. The question is whether you are giving your body the raw materials and signaling molecules it needs to respond well. And that is where food becomes deeply relevant. This is not a fringe idea. The World Health Organization states that between 30 and 50% of all cancer cases are preventable. That does not mean food is a cure. It does not mean you can eat one thing and erase risk. But it does mean your daily choices matter far more than most people realize. When you eat, you're not just consuming calories. You're delivering information to your cells. You're sending biochemical instructions that can amplify oxidative stress and inflammation, or help switch on defenses that keep those forces in check. That is why the science of food and health has become so important. We now understand that your circulation, your immune system, your microbiome, your regenerative capacity, and your DNA protection systems are all influenced by what shows up on your plate. Now let me bring this into focus. When researchers study foods that may protect DNA and reduce inflammation, they are usually looking for bioactive compounds, natural molecules in food that interact with pathways inside your cells. Some bioactives act like antioxidants. Some help your body make its own detoxification enzymes. Some influence gene expression. Some alter the behavior of gut microbes. Some reduce inflammatory signaling. And some appear to affect angiogenesis, the growth of blood vessels, which is a normal process the body needs for healing, but one that can also be hijacked in disease when it becomes unbalanced. What makes this field so exciting is that we are no longer guessing. We now have human trials, mechanistic studies, epidemiology, and molecular biology all beginning to line up. One of the earliest landmark discoveries came from Johns Hopkins. In 1997, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences by Jed Fahey, Paul Talalay, and colleagues reported that 3-day-old broccoli sprouts contain 10 to 100 times higher levels of glucoraphanin than mature broccoli. Glucoraphanin is the precursor to sulforaphane, one of the most intensely studied food-derived compounds in the world. That finding changed the conversation because it suggested that a very small amount of a specific food could deliver a surprisingly concentrated biological signal. Researchers were no longer just saying, "Eat your vegetables." They were beginning to ask a more refined question: which vegetables, in what form, and through what mechanism? What followed is what I find truly compelling. A randomized controlled trial published in Mutagenesis in 2010 looked at young healthy smokers, a group exposed to substantial oxidative stress. After 10 days of eating steamed broccoli, the participants showed a 41% decrease in oxidized DNA lesions in peripheral blood cells and a 23% increase in resistance to hydrogen peroxide-induced DNA strand breaks. That is a remarkable finding, because it suggests that a food can measurably shift biomarkers tied to DNA damage, not in a petri dish alone, not only in mice, but in human beings. The study did not claim that broccoli cured anything. It showed something more subtle, and in some ways, more important. Food may strengthen the body's resilience against the molecular wear and tear that accumulates every day. Then came another striking line of evidence. In 2014, a randomized clinical trial published in Cancer Prevention Research studied a broccoli sprout beverage in a polluted region of China. Participants consuming the broccoli sprout preparation showed rapid and sustained increases in the excretion of airborne pollutant metabolites, including a 61% increase for benzene and a 23% increase for acrolein. In plain English, the intervention appeared to help the body clear some dangerous compounds more efficiently. Why does that matter for DNA? Because many pollutants and toxins cause harm by forming reactive intermediates that can attack DNA, proteins, and cellular membranes. If a food helps your body detoxify and eliminate those compounds faster, it may reduce the biological opportunity for damage to accumulate. And the story keeps getting richer. In 2019, a randomized controlled trial in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at men on active surveillance for localized prostate cancer. Researchers gave them soups made from broccoli with different glucoraphanin levels. The men consuming glucoraphanin-rich broccoli showed dose-dependent attenuation of gene expression changes linked to inflammation and other potentially oncogenic pathways in prostate tissue. That is an important phrase, so let me translate it. The food was not acting like a drug that destroys tissue. It appeared to be nudging biology in a more favorable direction, away from patterns associated with disease progression. This is the kind of science that fascinates me because it suggests that everyday foods may influence the operating system of the cell itself. So, how might this actually work? Let me take you one layer deeper. Broccoli sprouts are rich in glucoraphanin. When you chew, chop, or digest cruciferous vegetables, an enzyme called myrosinase helps convert glucoraphanin into sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is the star molecule here. It is not a vitamin. It is not a hormone. It is a phytochemical, a plant compound that your body interprets as a meaningful biochemical signal. One of its best-known actions is activating a pathway called NRF2. You can think of NRF2 as a master switch for cellular defense. When NRF2 is activated, your cells increase the production of protective enzymes, including glutathione S-transferases and NQO1, systems involved in neutralizing reactive compounds and supporting detoxification. Why is that so important for inflammation and DNA protection? Because oxidative stress and inflammation often travel together. When cells are under chronic oxidative pressure, they produce damaging molecules that can injure DNA, lipids, and proteins. At the same time, inflammatory pathways such as NF-kappa B can become overactive, keeping the immune system in a low-grade alarm state. Sulforaphane appears to influence both sides of this equation. Reviews in the scientific literature have described its ability to activate NRF2 while dampening NF-kappa B signaling, which means it may help strengthen antioxidant defenses and soften inflammatory signaling at the same time. That dual action is part of what makes it so biologically interesting. Now I want you to appreciate how elegant this is. Your body already knows how to defend itself. It already knows how to repair DNA. It already knows how to detoxify pollutants and control inflammation. The challenge is that modern life puts those systems under relentless strain. Ultra-processed foods, sedentary living, poor sleep, smoking, alcohol excess, air pollution, and chronic stress all create a biological environment that makes repair harder. What foods like broccoli sprouts appear to do is not magically take over the job. They may help your body do its own job better. They may increase the efficiency of pathways that were built into your biology from the beginning. There is also an epigenetic angle here that is especially exciting. Epigenetics refers to the ways gene activity can be turned up or down without changing the DNA sequence itself. Sulforaphane has been studied for effects on histone deacetylases and DNA methylation machinery, both of which help regulate which genes are active and which stay quiet. In cancer biology, that matters because genes involved in growth control, detoxification, inflammation, and programmed cell death can be influenced by these epigenetic processes. The literature suggests that sulforaphane may help shift some of these patterns in a more protective direction. Again, this is not a cure claim. It is a statement about biological tendency. A food may help bias the system toward defense rather than breakdown. And here is where the science becomes even more beautiful. Your gut microbiome is involved too. The microbes living in your digestive tract help process food compounds, shape immune tone, and influence inflammation far beyond the gut. If your microbiome is unhealthy, you may not convert plant compounds as effectively, and your inflammatory baseline may be higher. If your microbiome is robust, you may extract more benefit from the same meal. This means the effect of a food like broccoli sprouts does not happen in isolation. It happens inside an ecosystem. That is one reason food patterns matter more than miracle ingredients. You are feeding your cells, but you are also feeding the organisms that help regulate your metabolism and immunity. We can see this clearly in other human research. In 2021, a Stanford study published in Cell found that a diet rich in fermented foods increased microbiome diversity and lowered multiple inflammatory markers. In fact, 19 inflammatory proteins went down over the course of the intervention, including IL-6, one of the best-known markers associated with chronic inflammation. This tells us something very important. If you want a food to protect DNA and lower inflammation, you should think beyond a single compound and look at the broader terrain. A better microbiome creates a better biological context for repair. Lower chronic inflammation creates a calmer environment for healthy cellular signaling. The body works as a network. So based on this research, what foods deserve your attention if your goal is to support DNA protection and reduce inflammation on a daily basis? The first, and in my view the most compelling to understand, is broccoli sprouts or other cruciferous vegetables prepared in a way that preserves their bioactivity. Broccoli sprouts stand out because of their unusually high glucoraphanin content. Mature broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, arugula, bok choy, and watercress also belong in this conversation. Human research has linked cruciferous intake with favorable shifts in inflammatory biomarkers. A study of more than 1,000 women, published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, found that higher cruciferous vegetable intake was associated with lower circulating TNF-alpha, IL-1, and IL-6, with differences of about 13%, 18%, and 25% between the highest and lowest intake groups. That is not trivial. If you want practical advice, think regularity rather than intensity. A small serving used consistently matters more than heroic bursts followed by nothing. The second food pattern I want you to think about is extra virgin olive oil. Why? Because inflammation control is not just about avoiding harm. It is also about changing the composition of your daily diet toward foods rich in polyphenols and healthy fats. The pre-dimed trial, republished in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2018, found that a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil or nuts was associated with a lower incidence of major cardiovascular events compared with a reduced fat diet, roughly a 30% relative difference. That trial was not specifically a DNA repair study, but it is profoundly relevant because cardiovascular disease, inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, and oxidative stress are intertwined. And in a 2022 randomized crossover trial published in the European Journal of Nutrition, high polyphenol extra virgin olive oil improved antioxidant status and, in participants with inflammation, lowered high-sensitivity C-reactive protein. If broccoli sprouts are one of your ignition keys for defense pathways, extra virgin olive oil is part of the anti-inflammatory landscape you want to live in. The third category is fermented foods. This is where your microbiome enters the center of the story. Kimchi, plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, sauerkraut, and traditionally fermented vegetables can help cultivate an intestinal environment associated with lower inflammatory tone. I want to be careful here. Fermented foods are not identical, and they are not a replacement for fiber-rich plants. But the Stanford Cell study is a powerful reminder that what you eat shapes your immune system through your gut. If you are trying to create daily conditions for better DNA defense, better detoxification, and better inflammatory control, a healthier microbiome gives you leverage. It may influence the way your body processes polyphenols, glucosinolates, and other bioactives. It also helps maintain the intestinal barrier, which matters because a leaky or inflamed gut can allow inflammatory signals to spread systemically. The fourth food I want you to include is berries, especially blueberries. Berries are rich in anthocyanins, the pigments that give them their deep blue, red, and purple colors. These compounds have been studied for antioxidant anti-inflammatory, and vascular effects. In a 6-month randomized controlled trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2019, people with metabolic syndrome who consumed the equivalent of 1 cup of blueberries a day improved endothelial function and measures tied to vascular health. That may sound far from DNA repair, but it is not. Good circulation helps deliver oxygen, nutrients, and immune surveillance where they are needed. Lower oxidative stress in the blood vessel lining means fewer damaging signals reaching tissues over time. When you build a meal around broccoli sprouts, berries, extra virgin olive oil, and fermented foods, you are creating a cooperative network of bioactives rather than relying on a single hero compound. And there is one more daily habit worth mentioning because the evidence is broader than many people realize. Coffee. A 2017 umbrella review in the BMJ concluded that coffee consumption was more often associated with benefit than harm across a wide range of health outcomes, with particularly consistent signals in liver health and some cardiometabolic outcomes. Coffee contains chlorogenic acids and other polyphenols that may contribute to antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. This doesn't mean everyone should rush to drink more coffee, and it certainly doesn't mean more is always better. But it illustrates an important principle. Some of the most powerful health-promoting compounds in the human diet are hiding in plain sight inside familiar foods and beverages, not in exotic formulations. Now, if you're wondering how to use this information without turning your kitchen into a chemistry lab, let me make it very simple. Build your meals around defense, not deprivation. Add a handful of broccoli sprouts to a salad, soup after cooking, or a grain bowl. Use extra virgin olive oil as your default fat for dressings and finishing. Include a serving of fermented food most days if it agrees with you. Keep berries in your refrigerator or freezer. Make your plate a delivery system for bioactives. The goal is not perfection. The goal is repetition. These compounds work best as part of a steady dialogue with your biology. Daily signals matter. And now let me give you the one food I would place at the center of this conversation if your specific concern is protecting DNA while helping reduce inflammation: broccoli sprouts. Not because they are magical, not because they replace good medical care, and not because they are the only healthy food that matters. I choose them because the convergence of evidence is unusually strong. The 1997 PNAS discovery showed how concentrated they are in glucoraphanin. Human research in mutagenesis showed measurable improvements in biomarkers related to DNA damage. The randomized trial in cancer prevention research showed enhanced detoxification of real-world pollutants. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition trial showed effects on gene expression pathways linked to inflammation and cancer progression. When different kinds of evidence begin to point in the same direction, I pay attention. Here's the beautiful part. This is not a luxury food. It is not a patented compound. It is not a synthetic molecule you can only obtain through a prescription. It is a young vegetable, a living food. And what it appears to do is remind us that biology is dynamic. Your genes are not your destiny. Your cells are responding to the environment you create every day, and food is one of the most powerful parts of that environment. If you choose broccoli sprouts regularly, along with an overall pattern rich in plants, polyphenols, healthy fats, and fermented foods, you may be helping your body create a calmer, cleaner, more resilient internal world. I also want to say something important for anyone listening who is dealing with a diagnosis, a family history, or anxiety about cancer or chronic disease. Food should never be used as a substitute for appropriate medical care. Screening matters, treatment matters, your physician matters, but food also matters. It matters before disease, during disease, and after disease. It matters in the background every single day. And one of the most empowering things about this science is that it gives you a role to play. Not a fantasy role, a real one. You may not control everything, but you do have meaningful influence over the biochemical environment inside your body. So if you take one idea from this conversation, let it be this. Your body is repairing, defending, and adapting every day, and the foods you eat can either support that work or make it harder. Broccoli sprouts are one of the most intriguing foods we have for supporting those defenses because of their sulforaphane potential, their connection to detoxification, their influence on inflammatory signaling, and their relevance to DNA protection. That is why researchers keep studying them. That is why this field continues to grow. And that is why something as simple as what you put on your plate tomorrow can be more consequential than it appears. If you found this helpful, share it with someone you care about. These conversations about food, inflammation, DNA protection, and long-term health are some of the most important conversations we can have. And if you want to go deeper, keep exploring the science of cruciferous vegetables, the microbiome, and anti-inflammatory eating patterns, because the more you understand the biology, the more intentional your choices become. Your body has an extraordinary capacity for defense and repair when you give it the right conditions, and sometimes one of the smartest things you can do for your health begins with something as humble as a sprout.